Welcome to the Weather Insights briefing. This is the evening of September 11th, and we are looking at Hurricane Francine making landfall on the Louisiana coastline. There's a satellite image. You can see the outer northern eye walls. It's moving onto the coastline presently, and got a pretty decent eye shape and form just before making landfall. And that is the current satellite image. Jeff, do we have the radar image we can show there? There we go. See the outer northern eye wall edge. Of course, the northeastern eye wall there just moving that very strong band just passing through Homa, moving north of there, Morgan City. And I'm sure there's some outer bands there, but you can see that eye still a pretty large eye, and not seeing too much, at least in this radar image, on the backside of the storm, Jeff.
Yeah, so the big news is just recently the aircraft was in here. Obviously, the aircraft's been in here all day long, and they did see the pressure drop 10 millibars, and they did find flight level winds around 100 and around 100 knots. So that equated to the upgrade to the Category 2 with 100-mile-an-hour winds here coming in. Interestingly enough, there's a oil platform down here, this one right here, that recorded 112 miles per hour earlier this afternoon when the northern eye wall moved through that area. Now that's up at 100 feet in the air. And you can see all these red numbers here are the current wind gust. And so we are seeing some gusty winds now moving in. I'm surprised we're not seeing a little bit higher gust here, but this is very typical of a landfalling hurricane. Is you don't necessarily get what you see out over the water where you have less friction over the land. Interesting enough, we've gusted up to 40 plus in New Orleans from some of the squalls, 60 miles an hour or so around Morgan City. And we could put the peak on here actually and take a look at the peak wind gust, and we'll see if it works or not. But yeah, you can see some of the peak wind gust here, 64 miles an hour down here in Terrebonne Bay, 53, 49 up in this region. There are some observation sites down in this area, but they don't report peak wind gust. And so this site right down here on the coast is, I think, a tide location, and it was supporting sustained winds of around 55 miles an hour or so. So very interesting that so far on the land observation sites, we haven't seen, some really strong winds. And, these coastal areas here, I think it's probably not a lot down here, but these coastal areas are now well within the eye. And just to be clear, landfall is when the center of the eye crosses the coast. So not when the eye wall crosses the coast. This is that northern eye wall here, which is just pounding away at that Highway 90 corridor there from Homa up through Morgan City. But it's when the center of this crosses the coast, and we're getting really, really close to having official landfall here. The Hurricane Center probably within the next 45 minutes or so going to declare landfall down here in southern Louisiana. And then the other thing is the tide. So, landfall happening right about here with that kind of large eye. So you're getting that maximum push of water now with the south-southwest winds pushing in here to the east of the center. And this is one of the tide gauges here around Crocodilia. And you can see the almost vertical trace here and how quickly that water is overrunning the coast. I mean, we're up to 5.6 feet above normally dry ground. So remember, we were thinking anywhere from 5 to 10 feet in this area.
Yep.
And this is still blasting up. The question is, the last report here was 4:15, almost an hour ago. Is the tide gauge, did it survive? Interestingly enough, the record here 9.9. So we'll see if we can get some more data out of this and if it's still going up.
Yeah. Do you recall the last name storm for that record? Was that Laura or Ida or something, one of those?
It might be Ida, but I doubt it was Ida. Ida was further over here to the
Yeah.
east. So it potentially could be Andrew back in 92. Andrew kind of came up through this region
Yeah.
right here. I don't know. I'd have to look into it.
Yeah. Yeah. So there, we're looking at some more tidal information. It looks
Flash
like,
flood warnings.
Yeah.
These are all flash flood warnings going on now from the rainfall.
Okay. Okay. Do we have a forward speed on the storm, Jeff? Is it still around 10 miles per hour? Did it pick up speed as we were talking about this morning, the possibility of that getting caught up in that trough?
Yeah, it's definitely moving faster than it was. I don't know exactly what the forward speed is. You
Hmm.
can see we have a few scattered showers developing over our area right here. So
Yeah.
um, I know it was moving about 13 miles an hour earlier. Let's see. Yeah, moving northeast at 17 now. So
Wow.
uh,
It's really
you
picked up.
know,
Well, that's good
as
news
we
for the
expected.
flooding. Yeah.
Yeah, that's good news for the flooding. As we expected, that
Hmm.
increase in forward motion.
Hmm.
But this is a pretty decent sized wind field here for hurricane force winds, what we call the maximum radius of wind. And this is extending out a good 30 miles either side of the center, so about 60 miles out. So this is a pretty good push, and you can just look at this. Even if this were to turn a little bit more to the north as expected, New Orleans, this is coming.
Yeah.
You're gonna get in that eastern eye wall. Here's New Orleans. You can see this eastern eye wall here is going to push right up between New Orleans and Baton Rouge is likely to get into the western eye wall. So both of these major metro areas are going to feel the opposite sides of the eye wall here over the next 4 or 5 hours or so. So it's going to get a little western there in New Orleans and Baton
Yeah.
Rouge, and then right up through the middle here. You talk about Hammond, the areas Laplace here on the west side of Pontchartrain, Mandeville. You got to imagine that water is being pushed right now with these southeast winds coming across the lake, being pushed toward the western and northwestern shore here of the lake of Pontchartrain. So water level rises coming this evening in the dark. You're going to get this tonight in the dark
Yeah.
over here on the northwest side of Pontchartrain. Be ready.
Yeah. Highly populated area too. So stay sheltered, folks. Don't get out in this stuff. Very dangerous, falling trees, flooding, all kinds of hazards out there. So shelter in place from now is a good time. Now is a good time, and then through the rest of the evening. And we also talked about the aftermath too. A lot of dangerous things involved there too. So just stay sheltered in place. And if it hadn't already happened, there's probably power outages, quite a few coming later on this evening.
Yep. And here you go right here. Here's an offsite that went down. Possibly power loss or probably power loss because most of these sites can take this type of wind. So, but we lost the ob here at 5:05. So there goes that.
Yeah,
Very common in these storms. That's why, it's just really hard sometimes to know what the peak winds actually are in these inland locations because you lose the offsite. This one's still going. This is closer down to the coast, but
yeah,
surprisingly, interestingly enough, the sustained winds here have never really been that strong. So maybe some sort of local protection here.
yeah,
You never know. You never know with these offsites if there's something close to them that's causing some weird winds or something like that.
yeah. Can we go back to the radar just for a minute and just kind of expand out? I'm just curious how far the bands go inland. Oh, well, yeah, go ahead and talk about what you got there, Jeff, and then maybe go back to it after that.
This one was just let's see, we're taking a look at Thibodaux, Louisiana, and they've been gusting to 50. Their upside's still up. Oops, maybe I
Hmm.
pulled it up twice. Their upside's still up, but what is this? Five
Five,
o'clock, and
5:20.
still that's not sustained tropical storm. We're gusting the tropical storm, but not
Yeah,
sustained over there. So
it's
this is
interesting.
this is the fun stuff of wind and landfall and tropical systems.
Yeah. Yeah, not a lot of friction either. It's pretty flat there. Well, a lot of trees, but nothing out of the ordinary to really break the wind. I mean, they've had their share of strong storms in there, but
Yeah, you
yeah,
can see on the radar here the feeder bands, progressing now up north of Pontchartrain, into the Baton Rouge metro area, up here Hammond, and then closing in on southern Mississippi here, or Gulfport up towards Hattiesburg. Eventually, this area over here on the Mississippi coast, the Gulfport area, and these areas, these are more feeder bands coming in from the Gulf, and potentially, this is where we could see some tornado activity over here in these feeder bands to the east, well to the east of the center. Maybe even over here in Alabama,
Yeah,
Florida
they're
Panhandle too.
actually look like a pretty sizable amount of convection over that way where you just mentioned around Alabama. So yeah, always a tornado threat with the. There you go. Well, actually, that's pretty far out there. I mean, that's all the way to Georgia. So, but it's just now moving inland. So those feeder bands that can produce those tornadoes really haven't even gotten into Alabama. Fully yet. Still got some work to do before they get up there. Do we do we have the National Hurricane Center forecast track where it showed it slowing down there in the Missouri area later on this week? I'm still concerned about this thing, even as a depression, bringing a lot of rain to that area and potential flooding maybe for that area when it starts to slow down, if it's still forecast to. Maybe we've lost sound here.
So this is the
There,
forecast track, and we still have that slowing here as we get into the Friday Saturday time frame, and we'll see what's left of it. There's a lot of dry air that comes in here, so this may help
yeah,
deplete some of the rainfall up here.
yeah. There's pretty fair amount of rain already in northern Louisiana, Arkansas. That could be some lift from that shortwave trough. Probably, Jeff, that really would started to push Francine to pick up speed.
Yeah,
That
over
could be
here.
from that trough, right?
Yeah, it could. Yeah, that's more than likely the lift we're seeing. The tropical moisture. I mean, you go outside here in Houston, you can tell it's a tropical atmosphere.
Oh yeah,
So we had a little heating today, and you can see these little scattered showers that have developed, and then the shortwave trough come in across Texas,
yeah,
really impacting and developing this up here. I did want to mention the tornado watch that is in effect, really from the center eastward over towards Mobile. This is in effect until 11 o'clock tonight. Again, those feeder bands well away from the center are the ones that typically can produce the tornado. So the highest risk area is going to be over here to the east of where the center's coming in.
yeah. Still have the hurricane warning, of course, in effect for southern coast of Louisiana, and the tropical storm warning all the way all the way up the eastern Louisiana coast into Mississippi, Alabama. No surprise there, as we continue to expect tropical storm force winds for that area. But yeah, the of course the as we said earlier, the tornado threat looms. We also have a new depression in the southern Atlantic Bay. I saw that earlier that you pulled up just for a minute.
Yep, tropical depression 7 out here in the middle of nowhere, and the forecast track doesn't do a whole lot with it. Kind of takes it off to the west northwest. Again, like we've had many times this season, we have a whole bunch of different areas out here with some chances. Best one may end up being here off the southeast U.S. coast as we get into this weekend, early next week. Possibly some sort of subtropical or maybe transitioning to tropical development. And then this actually kind of turns back and potentially hits the Carolinas as we get into next week, or moves a little bit up the East Coast. So something to keep an eye on. I don't anticipate it to be anything strong. Interestingly enough, Francine is the seventh Category 2 or higher hurricane to strike the state of Louisiana since 2000. So in the last 24 years, the state of Louisiana has had 7 Category 2 or greater hurricanes, and so just kind of
Man,
And we all know it, right?
right.
We've seen it here in Texas, what's happened in Louisiana, especially in 2020, but just back to back to back hurricane events here in the state of Louisiana.
Yeah, it just seems there just seems to be a slot there that they find to go into that area more times than not. Either they cross Florida, then turn north and go into Louisiana, or like Francine did, they start in the Southern Gulf and start off northwest, turning north, and eventually northeast. And those poor folks, they just keep getting battered.
Yeah. And again, eyewall coming into the more populated areas here, the Southern Highway 90 corridor here, Morgan City, Homa, Grand Isle, you're about ready to get into some of this. Eventually pushing up towards the Thibodeau area, Laplace, Donaldsonville, Gonzales, and then into the Metro New Orleans, and eventually over into the Metro Baton Rouge area. And it'll be interesting to see as this eye moves in. This is where we may, when the winds come out of the southwest and even the west a little bit more, that's where we may get our maximum push of water down here on the coast. Because thus far, that one tide gauge of about 5.6 feet has been the maximum that I've seen. Again, there could be things happening between the tide gauges down here, and a lot of this is very shallow, marshy areas, so that storm surge can kind of push across and you may not get the height, but you can get a lot of area covered with water. But you're getting some big push right now with these southwest winds coming in here. Port Fourchon right down over here, Grand Isle over here. This is extremely vulnerable to storm surge down here. There's not a lot. There's some roadways and there's some barrier islands. There's not a lot of barrier islands anymore left down here, but
Yeah.
that surge is definitely pushing into this area right now. So it'll be interesting to see. I know I've seen some video around here from Dulac of water pretty much overrunning the entire area, even though the tide gauge there is not showing a whole lot. So sometimes these gauges and the anemometers and the wind speed and all this, when this stuff starts going, it starts cutting out too. So that's a lot of reason why we go out there a lot of time in the post survey stuff to really get a good idea of what happened.
Yeah. And when we started just 17 minutes ago, we saw the northern eye wall moving on shore. Now the center getting very close. Interestingly enough, I just checked National Hurricane Center's website, and they have Francine makes landfall in southern Louisiana. I think this is just an update. It says 5 p.m., but it doesn't. Well, it appears just now, maybe in I've got right at 5:30. It appears just now that the center may be actually making landfall, Jeff.
Yeah, I mean it's a big broad
Very
center
broad.
here. I mean, I don't know. I think earlier today the recon was saying it's something like 30 miles across or something.
Yeah.
So pinpointing exactly where that is, the Hurricane Center is great at that. But I'll be interested to see where they determine landfall. If it's right here, I don't know if this there's no town right here, or
Right.
if they say it's over here around the Dulac area. But we'll see. We're splitting hairs, really with the where it makes landfall. If you look at this bad boy,
It may be Homa.
you
I mean,
know,
it seems to be the center, so sort of it seems to be taking aim at Homa right now, but you never know. Homa
yeah,
seems pretty
but
far inland. But
the I mean this is a big honking eye wall. So I mean you're talking from here to here is 70 to 80 miles across. So roughly the distance from between about New Orleans and Baton Rouge. I mean you can see this western Iowa is going to come up over Baton Rouge. The eastern Iowa is going to come up over New Orleans. So it's not like your Beryl, for example, or your Ian or your Ida or your Laura, where you had a really tight, concentrated eye. This has always been a big system, and then some of that is due to the way it formed. Also, some of it's due to the dry air intrusions into it that it's had along the way. And so, just looking at the visible satellite picture, it doesn't look like a healthy hurricane. Okay, I mean, I've
no.
seen it to be a category 2. It's not doing great, and you can see the upper level shear is literally as it comes to the coast, it's literally starting to blow the top of this thing off. And
Yeah.
the shear, we talked about this. We've been talking about this the last couple of days. Does the shear get to it before it makes landfall, or is it able to come up to the coast and make landfall and move fast enough to kind of negate the shear? And really, the second is kind of what's happened. You know, it's been able to strengthen right up to the coast. But as you can see here in the last image, this is starting to look really pitiful. The cloud tops are blowing off now. So another few hours, and this would have started to weaken. Unfortunately, it's on the coast at this point, so the shear just wasn't quite able to do the job there before it got to the coast.
Yeah, yeah. Thankfully, we didn't have a rapid intensification with this, but yeah, you're right. That last loop really can't even see the eye. That first image is about the best the eyes looked, and the last image is about, well, it's really non-existent, just visibly anyway. So yeah, not very impressive. Looks a little bit better on infrared. Well, not really.
Yeah, I mean this convective burst
Yeah.
is north of the center. You know, the center is down in this area here, and
Yeah.
so I mean this is a classic look of sheer literally destroying the storm, like literally blowing the top of the storm off, and that's what's happening.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, it was just a few hours, 6 hours too late. But we'll see. Like we've kind of mentioned, we haven't seen the real strong winds here down at the surface. I'd be surprised if they're not getting them. You know, you're having dry air kind of getting in here, and so that kind of helps accelerate some of that wind down to the surface. But we'll see. There might be just enough weakening here as it comes in that it's helping um, not some of those stronger winds aloft not to get down to the surface. We'll just have to see. But I would
Yeah.
still be concerned up here due to the acceleration of this forward. You know, southern Mississippi, north of Lake Pontchartrain, this area up here in Mississippi, you're going to get some gusty winds tonight. You know, power outages are certainly possible. So just because it's all falling apart doesn't mean you can't still get some strong winds further inland.
Yeah. I'm uh I'm just checking 500 millibar winds right now. The most I can find is southeast of the eye, about 84 miles per hour. That's 500 millibar winds. So that's not surface. And then south of the eye, about 77 miles per hour. Um, let me just look a little bit closer to the surface here. Go 850. 850, that's more. Oh gosh, yeah, 850. Seeing a measurement here, unofficial, of course, 139. Oh, excuse me, let me change my units. Yeah, okay. That's like 139. What? 86 miles per hour. That's again, that's 850 millibar. And that's just east of the eye wall. So
Well, this Dulac sensor down here now is south at 73 sustained, so really close to her sustained hurricane force winds at this location right here. I mean, that's 73 sustained coming out of the south. So you can see, even though the eye looks really broad, you can clearly see it's right here, southwestern Terrebonne Parish. Luckily, there's not a whole lot down there.
yeah,
And it even looks like Morgan City and these areas up here are probably going to be on the western side. But I mean, just since we've been on here talking, look at the winds have come up inland now in Lafourche Parish. What is this? Raceland area gusting to 50 now.
mm-hmm.
New Orleans Metro, Lakefront Airport, New Orleans Lakefront gusting to 43, Metairie to 40. What are we over here? 51 at Thibodeau. So yeah, they're just getting into that northern Iowa we were showing on the radar there. So, like we mentioned, there's not a lot of ob sites here that are going through this, but as this lifts north, you're going to get into a lot more observation sites that are going to sample some of these winds. I'm going to go over here and look at what's happening off the Mississippi coast real quick. Uh, yeah, not too bad yet off the Mississippi coast, but you can see this east wind 42 over here at the east side of St. Bernard Parish, east side of Lake Pontchartrain. So this east wind is really pushing that water into Lake Pontchartrain right now from the east out of the Gulf of Mexico.
Yeah. Flash flood warnings now. They've got a box southeast of Homa. It does include Homa. Um, and then uh, another flash flood warning to just the northeast of that box, just southeast of Thibodeau, and then up around Morgan City, another flash flood warning. All these look like they're going to expire at 9. Let's see, that one by Homa expires at 7:15. Then Thibodeau, flash flood warning until 8 o'clock. And these are all, as you would expect, in those heavy rain bands, those outer rain bands that are moving just north of the eye wall there.
Yeah, you can. I mean,
Yeah,
this is it right through here. This is the hurricane. I don't think we're gonna see a whole lot back here on the south side. This is what we call, sometimes we call this like a half cane. And we've seen a lot of these on the Gulf Coast where this dry air is pulling in here. It's eroding the southern side of this. That southern eye
hmm
wall is falling apart. There's still gusty winds down here, 50, 60, 70 miles an hour. But clearly the worst of this is right through this area here with this northern eye wall. So, Morgan City, you're getting it now. Homa, you might be breaking into the eye, but Thibodeau and these other areas up here, just starting to get into it. And you can see coming up now, probably within the next hour here in the western portion of Metro New Orleans and over to Laplace, getting into this really strong banding here on the north side of the storm. So yeah, this is it's definitely a hurricane, and you're going to get hurricane conditions. It'll be interesting to see what kind of damage we get out of this, if we're getting a lot of this wind to the surface or not. Just based on the observation sites, unlike Beryl, I mean, with Beryl we had 80, 90 mile an hour winds
right.
being reported at the observation sites, and so far we haven't seen that with Beryl. Now, again, like I said, a lot of times these winds happen between the sites, and this is a very sparsely populated area of the Louisiana coast compared to the upper Texas coast where Beryl hit. But it'll be interesting to see. This is a lot bigger than Beryl, so there's a lot more real estate being impacted with the strong gusty winds and what we saw with Beryl.
Yeah. Yeah.
I wouldn't say this is strengthening. I mean, even though the recon showed the pressure continuing to fall as it came in, just looking at the appearance and looking at the satellite, I think this is probably leveled off and maybe even starting to weaken some. And that can make a little bit of a difference. I think the forward motion may compensate for that. I mean, you're moving forward speeds almost 20 miles an hour. So
Yeah.
technically you could sort of add some of that over here on this eastern side. So this area right over here, kind of east of the eye, Slidell, Mandeville, New Orleans. These are the areas that are probably, I imagine, going to see some of the stronger winds as we get into the evening.
Yeah. Yeah. Just checking some other wind speeds in the layers there. And yeah, the jet winds are above it, are divergent, but like you said, those mid-level winds could be negating some of that. The forward speed could be,
Yeah.
negating some of that. So anyway,
I mean,
interesting.
there we go. New Orleans gusting now to 47 at the lakefront.
Mm,
So
picking
it
up.
comes up quick. Like
Yeah,
it comes up quick on you. And
yeah,
I think that's kind of what we've been kind of talking about is there's a lot of bad things happening, a lot of wind happening down here, and it's going to come up into these more populated and metro areas here really fast over the next 1 to 2 hours. So, New Orleans, this is your time you need to get inside and get where you're going to be, and it's going to get a little rough here over the next few hours.
yeah. Not a good time to be on Bourbon Street right now, but shelter in place for sure. And I imagine some of those flash flood warnings, those will be extended, not extended, but expanded, I should say, up into the New Orleans area and beyond. And then the tornado threats, as you mentioned earlier. So, all righty. Well, I think that's going to wrap it up for us on this live stream, and probably as far as the coverage with Francine as well. We'll have another Weather Insights Tropics briefing later on the week. We'll check in with those other disturbances in the depression out in the Southern Atlantic Basin and give an update on those later on in the week or possibly this weekend. Jeff, thank you very much. Good stuff as always, sir.
Yes, sir.